Hello and welcome back to the Barstoolers Premier League podcast. I'm your host, Connell, and unfortunately, we do not have James in the podcast this week, but we do have two very capable co-hosts, Michael and Ronan. So this is going to be the last podcast before the international break next week, unfortunately. So we won't be back for another couple of weeks. But look, we're here now, and we're here to talk about the Premier League weekend just gone by. So to start with, I think we should confront the elephant in the room. I'm only ever on this podcast when United don't win. We've won 2 games this season.
That's pretty much every week anyway.
We've won 2 games this season, and I've missed the subsequent podcasts on each of them. I have a lot of thoughts on our most recent loss to Arsenal. I'm going to try and get through them without crying. Okay. Right. So I've got my notes here, and I've got a lot of notes, but I've had to put stars beside the ones I want to talk about because there's too much to talk about. We'd be here all day if I described what went wrong. All right. I seen Roy Keane was giving out after the game, giving out about work ethic and letting Solskjaer down and whatever. But he didn't explain anything that went wrong. I can promise you're going to learn more about the game by listening to me. And I'm not a player who's won the Premier League several times. How does Roy Keane still have a job, lads, as a pundit?
He's God complex. He thinks because he won the Premier League 20 years ago, he knows everything. But he just makes a job of being a bollocks, really. All he does is go on there, not really say much about anything. He'll say, oh, that player played bad for stupid reasons. He'll never point out the things he does wrong. It'll always be like, oh, his work ethic wasn't great. Obviously, that clip that goes around about him giving out about De Gea. He's like, oh, De Gea doesn't look as good as he was. But he's not pointing out the things, like say for example there, he wasn't pointing out the things that De Gea was doing wrong. He wasn't pointing out his positioning, or he wasn't even pointing out maybe De Gea wasn't pushing balls to the side, maybe he was pushing them back into play. He was just saying, oh, De Gea's not the player, he doesn't care about United anymore. It's just make a job of just awful football opinions. And especially over here, some people love that. Irish people in particular, seem to look and go like, oh, Roy Keane, he's a proper Irish footballer. He was a proper footballer back in his day. He wasn't like any of these new players. He knows his audience, I think.
Very possibly. It's just really surface level opinions. Like if you listen to the Barstoolers Premier League podcast and maybe you hear possibly a surface level opinion here and there, that's probably understandable because we haven't played football at the highest level. But it's just disgraceful that he can go on and say absolutely nothing. And people say, oh, yeah, he says it how it is. No, he doesn't. He doesn't say anything.
He's a clown. He's a clown.
You'd expect someone who's managing the game as well to at least have some opinion on tactics and the way players position themselves and all that. It's nothing. It's just he gives out about players' work ethic and whether or not they deserve to be at United or something. It's impossible to listen to.
He basically just says, why aren't you as good as I was? And that's it.
Yeah,
that's all he says. Okay. Well, Patrice Evra is a pretty bad pundit as well, but at least he seems nice. He did eat a raw chicken, or licked it at least, but at least he seems nice. Okay,
He's
right.
a fool as well.
So the first important point I have is Arsenal's press. Arsenal's press was, to be fair, very, very good. United couldn't get out in their own half. And it makes sense because a lot of teams will press United and it won't go well for them because we've got lots of fast players, lots of very technically good players in midfield, so we can pass through them pretty easily. So as a general rule, I wouldn't recommend pressing against United. But one thing Arsenal did that most teams don't do is pressed our defence, which absolutely makes sense because none of Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Victor Lindelof, Harry Maguire and Luke Shaw are particularly good under pressure. In fact, they're pretty bad, most of them. So Arsenal's press, they really pinned us back into our own box and we really struggled to play through them. We played with the diamond in midfield in this game. It worked very well against RB Leipzig. It did not work well against Arsenal, and I think a huge reason for that is the fact that we didn't play Anthony Martial because he's suspended. Martial is by far our best striker at holding the ball up and being sort of, I wouldn't describe him as a target man, but he's definitely the most physical, the most sort of natural centre forward, apart from Edison Cavani, but he's not exactly up to match fitness yet. Rashford is far, far better on the half turn rather than holding the ball up. And the same to be said with Mason Greenwood. So he really had no out ball because we were playing without wingers. And that's maybe okay if you've, for example, Alex Telles, who's able to get up and down the line, very good going forward. But Luke Shaw can't do that. In general terms, I think Luke Shaw was pretty good, but that was mostly defensively. Another reason why we lost is Nemanja Matic coming on. Absolutely no idea why Solskjaer brought him on. Not what we needed at all. We needed someone to get on the ball, speed the play up. And Nemanja Matic absolutely does not do that. He also brought off Bruno Fernandes, which, to be fair, he didn't have a very good game. But to bring off Bruno Fernandes when we need our best player, easily our best attacking player, in a scenario where we need to get an equaliser, and when Arsenal are really sitting back, understandable when they had the lead, to bring off Bruno Fernandes, who's so good in them tight spaces, absolutely appalling decision, especially when Paul Pogba was on the pitch. And also, not only was he on the pitch and not playing well, he's playing as a left winger, which I've never seen him do before. He just doesn't have the pace to play as a winger.
He's a bum. He is a bum.
Technical ability, yes, but doesn't have the pace at all.
He's a bum.
Luke Shaw on set pieces. What?
Reminds me of Phil Jones back in the day.
Like, that's literally what he's worst at. He can't cross a ball.
He's fat.
What's the story with Tellez? He's just not fit or anything, because you'd assume he'd be playing.
Coronavirus.
Oh, right, okay.
And
that
I think
makes
he
a bit more
still
sense.
has it, because he showed up to training, I think, yesterday for 10 minutes and went home. So I think he still has it. Usually I would say, so far this season, that the blame was on the players, but I don't think it is. As much as Solskjaer got it absolutely right away to PSG, he got it very, very right against Leipzig last week. He got it very, very, very wrong this week. That's my mini rant over.
I think a lot of the blame has to be put on the man, Paul Pogba. He's so bad. This season, he's just been very, very poor. He doesn't care. He doesn't track back. He loses the ball and it's other lads running after the ball for him, and then obviously he gave away the penalty. But when's he going to show his worth? He's been at United now a couple of seasons. He's definitely had flashes, but he's so much better with France. He's only good when he wants to be. And
Paul Pogba in the opposition's half and Paul Pogba in his own half are two very different things. I think he gave away the penalty there. He nearly gave one away against Brighton in that incident that was overturned. If my memory calls correctly, he gave away the penalty in Euro 2016 against Ireland, in last 16 against Shane Long, because he's all limbs. That's one of his huge advantages going forward, because he can shield the ball, people can bounce off him. But in his own penalty box, it means he'll just fucking stick out a leg and give away a penalty. He's way too clumsy in his own box and way too casual on the ball in his own half.
Do you think he'd be better off playing as number 10 then? Because he is very good going forward, and I know the year he first came back was out under Mourinho, and Ibra was there as well. He was one of the best players in the league, so I don't know. Maybe he's better just playing as number 10 or something like that.
It's weird. Usually under Mourinho, for the first 2 seasons, he was basically in the same position as he is now, that creative midfielder, and he generally played it very, very well. You see, for France, he plays that role. He plays it very, very well. So I honestly don't know. I don't know what's happened to him this season. It's not reinventing the wheel. It's a position he's played in before. Style of play, it just doesn't suit him. I honestly couldn't tell you.
If he's going forward, he is better. Maybe it's just the players playing behind him. I don't know who was it. Matic was playing kind of the deep, kind of number 6 role back under Mourinho.
Yes.
Well, I suppose he wasn't that great either. And who's they playing at the minute? Fred or McTominay, is it?
Well, on Sunday it was Fred is the number 6 and then McTominay beside Pogba, which I thought was peculiar before kickoff. I would have had it the other way around, personally.
Yeah, maybe it's just he needs a good number 6 in there with him. I know Matic isn't exactly brilliant, but he's at least somewhat consistent. I know Fred's good, but I wouldn't have said Fred's much of a defensive midfielder. I would have said he's kind of more box to box. I wouldn't be playing him as your single number 6. But then again, I haven't watched United as much as you, obviously, so you'd be in a better position to speak about that. But it was like we've touched upon before, but the Donny van de Beek signing, it's really weird because he kind of plays the same role as Pogba, and the two roles Donny van de Beek kind of play, you're either Pogba's or Bruno Fernandes' role. And when you do those two, you don't really need another player like that in there, but United kind of struggled for that number 6 position, or even United were struggling for centre half, so it was kind of weird they went in 40 million on him, but they didn't go and spend money on positions. They were kind of a lot more, they need players a lot more, and I know you can talk about squad depth and that, but you kind of want to make your first starting 11 as good as it is before spending money on that position again, because they spent 50-60 million on Bruno Fernandes. You kind of assume that starting position covered, or that starting position selected for him for Ole at that stage. I know it's kind of hard to justify going out and spending more money on a defender this year when you spent 80 million on Maguire last year, but it's kind of off-field stuff as well. It's kind of, I think, is definitely affecting what's happening on the pitch.
I think Karl Anka put it on an article with The Athletic, that Donny van de Beek, he's like the winter coat that you buy in a summer sale. He's available then, and after a couple of months, you're like, geez, why did I buy that coat? But then when it comes to winter, you're like, yeah, this is coming in handy now. This was a good deal. And I think that's probably a good way of putting Donny van de Beek. It's going to be a long season, especially because there's games every 3 or 4 days. He's probably going to start against Istanbul Besiktas tomorrow, or today when this is out, possibly 1 or 2 days ago if you're listening to this a little bit later. I think there's definitely a role for Donny van de Beek. And we're only a few games in. I think there's generally been an overreaction to how much he's playing. It'll be fine. Someone's going to get injured, most likely, at least for a couple of weeks. Again, Pogba did not play well on Sunday, so we can afford to drop him now. Before, we absolutely couldn't afford to drop Pogba. But again, going back to Pogba, on Wednesday against Leipzig, he played the same position, the same role as he did on Sunday, and he was brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. Brilliant assist from Mason Greenwood for the goal, the first goal. He really applied himself well. Obviously, in that diamond formation, it was Pogba who was tasked to go out to the left when defending because of lack of width with that formation. He did that fine. But on Sunday, he just didn't seem to be in the mood. Okay, so I think we've spent long enough on that mini rant, but it has to be said. I'm really looking forward. I'm a little bit scared to seeing how United react to that game, because it really looked like we were coming into some form and we'd shaken off the cobwebs, because we didn't have much of a pre-season, even less than most teams. And it looked like we'd kind of turned a corner. So I'm happy enough with the idea that was just a blip and we're going to be fine in the next few games. But we'll see how we respond. Okay, so going into the next game, again, you two are Liverpool fans, so you'll be able to talk about this more so than I. But Liverpool won 2-1 against West Ham this weekend. But it started off with a slight scare 10 minutes in. Yeah,
my man Pablo Fornals popped up with a goal. Very sloppy from Joe Gomez. But apart from that, Liverpool were generally very good. I thought they probably could have scored more. They had the goal ruled off for offside, and performance that I was very shocked but very impressed with was Daniel Phillips was making his Premier League debut, and he was winning every ball that came up in the air, header away. It was so impressive. You never would have thought that was his first game in the Premier League, but he was so good. I was kind of skeptical when I saw him because I would have quite liked Reece Williams, because in the couple of games he's played this season he seemed quite solid, and then seeing Phillips on the team sheet was a bit like, oh, jeez, Klopp, what are you doing? But that's why he's a Liverpool manager and I'm not. He makes these good decisions and it paid off. The concerning thing is no clean sheet again. Liverpool have conceded 14 goals this season, the most out of any team league. Although we did concede 7 against Villa, we still conceded 14 goals, and that's a lot in the space of those few games. It's slightly worrying, but we're top of the table at the minute, so I can't really complain too much.
Yeah, I think with the Nathaniel Phillips selection, I think was kind of more just experience. I know Phillips hadn't ever played in the Premier League before, but he had played, I think he was a regular starter for Stuttgart when he was in low there. And I know that was only Bundesliga 2, but I think Stuttgart got promoted with him in the side. And even a few times he played in the FA Cup and that for Liverpool, he's always looked grand. Not on Reece Williams, right? I think Reece Williams has played very well against Midtjylland in Champions League week before that. He played pretty much most of the game. There was a funny thing actually was pointing out on commentary, was that since Klopp came in, Liverpool have had 36 different centre-back partnerships, and none of them have been Matip and Gomez. which was bizarre to me. Well, Matt and Gomez had played together, but they'd never started together. Gomez, Matt had back in training now, so you'd assume he'd probably get the nod once he's fully fit. I don't know how long Fabinho's out for, but I think Brazil confirmed he's going to be out for the next international break. So I suppose at least it gives him a little bit more time to recover. Overall, very, very similar to the Sheffield game. Like, Liverpool started quite slow. I don't know what it is. It's just maybe just teams are kind of set up more defensively against the bigger sides like Liverpool and that. So you kind of have to work more. But even against the last 3 games, it's been really, really slow to start with Liverpool, and then the second half they kind of pick up the pace. The passing's kind of a little bit quicker. Obviously, Shaqiri and Jota made a big impact when they came on. The big ones were the 2 VAR decisions that went against Liverpool. And I mean, we have to talk about VAR again. To be honest, the penalty, I think it was soft, but it's hard to overturn it once you give it because there is a kick there from Masuaku.
It was soft, but it was a penalty. Like, if that wasn't given, you'd be raging, but it was quite soft from Salah going down.
I think it's actually, if he doesn't give it first time, I don't think he gives it on VAR. But if he gives it on VAR, I don't think VAR are going to overturn it. It's one of those ones where it's soft enough where if it wasn't given, whatever, and then there's still enough contact there that if it is given, it's hard to say it was a clear and obvious error. On the Jota first goal that was ruled out, I know a lot of people were angry online that people were saying, oh man, he went under Fabianski. Let's be real, you can't go in on the keeper like that. You can't. And in fairness, they didn't give it for the foul on Fabianski. If you actually look at the replays, he comes through the back of Ogbonna's leg, and Ogbonna was the one that kicked it out to Jota on the rebound. So I don't think there could be any complaints about that one. Other than that, defensively, other than that one mistake from Gomez, we look solid enough. I know Fornal had another chance blocked by Robertson. For the most part, we look sound enough defensively. Jota, again, is kind of bringing up that debate again. Should we drop Firmino for Jota?
Yes.
And maybe play Salah or Mane through the middle. I don't know if like overall for the long term we should do that, but definitely for a few games, just until Firmino kind of gets a little bit of confidence back, or maybe just not up to fitness. It's like I was having this conversation with someone there during the week. I think just pre-season's just killing players because the fitness isn't quite there yet. So I don't know.
Yeah, that and the fact they're playing every 3 or 4 days. But I find myself watching the Liverpool game there and thinking 60 minutes in, 65 minutes in, they haven't got going at all here. But to be fair, they went up the gears and probably did enough to win the game. West Ham with another decent performance. I thought Arthur Masuaku was quite good. I thought Declan Rice was quite poor. Thomas Soucek, he's a really good player, isn't he?
Yeah, he's class.
Big fan of Thomas Soucek. He's quite a strange player. I think Mourinho said that Moyes has found his new Fellaini, and that's probably the most comparable player because he's just such a threat in the air. But he's far better on the ball than Marwan Fellaini, far more composed. But going back to Nat Phillips, do you think it was really that good of a performance? Because he got man of the match, and I thought that was a bit generous. Do you think it's sort of that sort of condescending commentary thing where it's like, oh, he's 18 years old and he's just passed the ball 5 yards. Remarkable from the young man. Or do you think it was that good?
No, I think it was overhyped. I do think he played very well. He was one of our better players. To be honest, I thought probably Trent was probably the best player on the pitch. He was the best. He was the only one kind of creating anything going forward. It was kind of the same against Midtjylland. He kind of stepped up. And I know Trent said that during the week as well. I know you can't really take much from comments from players and that in press conferences and that because they're always going to try and say the right thing. But he kind of said during the week there, he's not a young player anymore. Like a lot of people think of, but he's still young, still only 22. But this is his 4th season in the Premier League, so he's highly experienced. I think that was his 100th Premier League match actually. So it's you're kind of looking to players like that to step up and grab the game by the neck and bring it forward. Like Trent, being realistic, West Ham only ever had 1 or 2 chances where they hit us on the counter attack. Played very well defensively, set up very well. And when they did get forward, they did threaten us. But it was just that pushing forward kind of from Trent and thought Gini Wijnaldum, actually, sorry, changed that. Gini Wijnaldum was he's the best player on the pitch. Forgot about him. He just kind of broke everything down, kind of, when he got caught in tight spaces, kind of managed to get out, bring the ball forward. But that's not to take away from Phillips' performance. It was a very good performance under pressure on a Premier League debut.
So elsewhere in the Premier League, Everton lost 2-1 to Newcastle. Do you think that the real Everton are starting to show? Or do you think it's just a slight blip? Jordan Pickford dropped Seemed a decent performance by Robin Olsen.
Yeah, I just hope Everton, they've been taken off that high horse now. It's like they're back to reality. Just a mid-table club. Obviously, Rodriguez and them, like, they're not going to be at that the whole season. Calvert-Lewin is not going to be getting 40 goals a season. Probably like the way he was going, a lot of fans would have thought that he'd be the man, like top scorer in the Premier League and all that. But I'm just glad that they lost. It's just heartwarming. Hate Everton.
I think they have definitely improved, but it's a squad that, particularly because if you look at that game, they had to play likes of Delph. Delph, the backup left full, was a 19-year-old, never played in the Premier League before. I think that their starting 11 is very good. I don't think anyone's going to question that. And their midfield definitely looks like hugely improved. I mean, that could have been a lot worse for Everton there, because I know Allen went down injured fairly early on the match, but he got up and continued. I think someone like Alan and Decore are more important, more so than James Rodriguez. When Everton don't start with Charleston or Rodriguez, I know Charleston is suspended, but I think he's far more important to Everton than either Rodriguez or Calvert-Lewin, because he's
such a hard worker.
He's such a hard worker, and the talent is there as well. He does a lot more. He kind of brings the team forward a lot more. If you look at James Rodriguez, he's not really great on the ball and great pass of the ball, but it's kind of Richarlison who gets the ball in his own half and then drives the team forward. And not on top of that, he's also a really good finisher, and I think they look extremely one-dimensional without him. Because when you have James Rodriguez and Richarlison in there, you can either play it out to Rodriguez and he can try and find that final ball, or you can give it to Richarlison and he can kind of drive the team forward 20, 30 yards. I just think without Richarlison, they're extremely one-dimensional.
I think it's a little bit harsh to focus completely on Everton, because I actually thought Newcastle were very good in this game. Newcastle, they're very basic, but they do have some quality because they're attacking players, not always that great, but they're all really, really quick. They can absolutely provide a threat to your back line. With Callum Wilson, he's lightning. Ryan Fraser, Alan St. Maximin is brilliant. I love St. Maximin. They've just got a lot of pace up there, and they kind of just play to that. They defend really deep, and when they get a chance to counter, they do so. And because they're so basic and pretty one-dimensional, it means that they're never going to do too well, but they've got a formula that seems to be working for them.
So Maximin could finish, he'd be one of the best players in the league.
Yeah. So once they get their finishing consistent, they could definitely provide a threat to some teams this season.
They're a team that no one's really talked about either, because they're 11 points after 7 matches. The only teams they've lost are Brighton, which they played really bad in that match, and United. And they conceded 3 goals in the last 10 minutes against United. So even in that match, they were kind of in it until the end. The only time I've actually seen them play really poorly was Brighton. I think it's like these funny conspiracy theories that people come out with football during the season. But like, Newcastle never seem to win any matches, but they're always fine. They're always 11th or 12th in the league. Like, if you told me before the weekend that Newcastle had actually won a game this season, I'd be like, what? Because I don't remember their games that they've won. But like, even like getting draws against the likes of Wolves and that, it's kind of gone on the radar just a wee bit.
I was convinced they'd at least be in the relegation battle this season, because last year they finished decent, 13th or 14th. But if you look at the expected points, absolutely rock bottom. They way outperformed. And I was saying, Bruce, like, they're just getting lucky here. Next season, they're going to be found out. But with a couple of good additions like Callum Wilson, Ryan Fraser, St. Maximin looks a lot better this season already. That individual quality, they'll probably be okay.
I think they were just statistically the luckiest team in the league last year, because I think they had the lowest amount of shots to goal comparison. I think it was something like that. And I think they hit the lowest XG in the league as well. I know these are, people can talk about the meaning of XG and that, but they did. It's just when they get their chances, they seem to actually take them. Yeah, no,
actually, it's the most objective way of sort of looking at it. And you get XG for and against, and then you get the expected points, and they should have finished bottom. They were really, really lucky last year, but as I said, they should be okay this year. So next match, I feel like we have to talk about, even if you don't want to, Ronan, is Fulham against West Brom. Fulham got a big win here at Craven Cottage. That will do their chances of staying up the world of good. But do you still think they have a chance, or are they still absolutely down?
Yeah, Ronan, so happy that Fulham got the win there. Scott Parker unnecessarily slandered on this podcast, tarnished his name. Then Fulham, all they did, they went and got the dub, take them out of the relegation zone above West Brom now, and Sheffield and Burnley are still below them. But realistically, they will be in the battle for relegation. No matter what happens, they're going to be in and around this conversation come May, maybe even down before then, but I was just happy. It was a win for society.
Absolutely.
After Fulham got that win at the weekend, and it was just a rocket. The first goal was a screamer. They were definitely listening to the podcast like, we need to do this for Scott, the gaffer. Fuck that Ronan fella. We're getting the win here.
They played that TikTok in the dressing room before they walked out.
Actually, to be fair, right, looking at the West Brom kit, they probably deserve to lose for that kit alone. It's fucking horrendous to look at.
It's not a good combination of colours, is it? Yellow and red.
It's terrible. What? Yeah, it's not even. It's like yellow and like kind of like an orangish red. I don't know what it is. It's awful. Yeah, I didn't watch it though because it was pay-per-view and was not putting myself through extended highlights of Fulham versus West Brom. I don't care if the goals were good. Fuck that.
Yeah, as you said, the unbelievable strike by Ola Aina on his weak foot, and I was watching the extended highlights because I do some research for this podcast, unlike Ronan, and it really should have been 3-0 because there was a shot cleared off the line by, I think, Semi Ajayi, and it was ludicrous. It went to VAR. I don't know how they didn't give a penalty. His hand was it was close to his body, to be fair, but it was on the line and it hit his wrist. Like, I have no idea how it wasn't given as a penalty. I doubt Fulham will care too much because it was a big win for them nonetheless. But I just thought that was peculiar. Look up that incident. Don't know how it wasn't a penalty.
The best thing about Fulham in the league, Alexander Mitrovic is 26 years of age. What? Shocking.
Surely not.
He is 26. He's been around forever. The man is 26.
I could be convinced he was 26 when he's made his debut for Newcastle.
Yeah. Nope. 16th of September, 1994.
It's like 40.
It's like Thomas Muller doesn't age.
Yeah. Thomas Muller gets younger. Benjamin Button. So elsewhere in the Premier League, I have a major talking point because I don't believe we've mentioned them on any episode of the podcast so far, just because of the way they are. But Burnley have 1 point after 6 games. They lost 3-0 to Chelsea, which in isolation is understandable. But do you think Burnley fans should have anything to worry about this season?
Yes, they are really poor. I watched them against Chelsea. I watched them against Spurs as well. At first, they've had a difficult enough start. But they're not great, are they? Like, really, I know that Chris Wood going forward, but defensively, they don't look anywhere near as solid. Maybe they'll be a little bit better once James Tarkowski comes back. But Nick Pope's playing nowhere near as good as he did last year. And especially, I think last year Liverpool had the most clean sheets in the league, but Nick Pope was the goalkeeper with the most clean sheets because Liverpool got some of those when Adrian was playing in the nets. So Nick Pope was really poor for the Ziyech goal. I know he was kind of wrong-footed, and maybe he was expecting, or maybe he saw it late, but the Ziyech shot was pretty much down the middle of the goal. They don't offer much going forward at all. There's no pace in that team either. I know maybe Burnley have never really been the quickest of teams, but going forward, they've not really got anyone creative in midfield. I know they've got Dwight McNeil, who's a pretty promising young player. He seems to be quite decent. I know he was linked with a move to, was it Spurs during the transfer window? He's pretty good. I've seen him a few times. He looks like one of Burnley's better players already. And then Chris Wood and Ashley Barnes are good finishers up top, but it's actually getting the chances up front. They're not creating anything at all. I know Spurs and Chelsea probably aren't the best games to judge them off because Spurs and Chelsea are two of the bigger teams in the league, but 1 point after this many games is worrying, and there's nothing there to suggest there's going to be massive improvements. But Sean Dyche, there's been a few times where Burnley looked like they were going to be down there. Even last year, I think they had a pretty poor start and then clawed it back. So maybe the Premier League experience and Sean Dyche will maybe pay off for them and get back up. If it was going to be any team that could do it, I'd say it is Burnley after a start like that. But you don't know.
Yeah, you were on about their defence proving problematic, and I think that's going to happen when you're playing Kevin Long at the back every single game. He's been at Burnley for years. He's never really had a look in, and that's because he's not really that good. I've seen him play for Ireland a few times, and he's like Shane Duffy if he wasn't good at all, because he's really slow and just a lump and just not at the Premier League level. At least not to be starting consistency.
Watching Celtic at the minute, Shane Duffy isn't Shane Duffy if he's any good at all.
He's a colossus for Ireland, though.
Bullet header, that's what he is.
Yeah.
I think Tarkowski is supposed to be coming back soon, though, so that might help Burnley improve a little bit.
No, the worrying thing is, Ronan, they're playing James Tarkowski. He was back a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Oh, was he? Is it Ben? No, is it Ben Mee that's injured, actually? Oh,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's better than Kevin Long.
Yeah, no doubt. It couldn't be much worse. He's not really cut out to be playing at the Premier League level every single week. An okay deputy for Burnley, but I think he started every game this season, and it shows.
No, the marquee signing this season was Dale Stevens. I don't know what
Burnley signing that.
I don't know what they expect.
If you told me at the start of the season that Dale Stevens had been in Burnley for the last 15 years, I would have believed you.
Absolutely. I think it's starting to come back to bite them, the fact that they never sign any players. It's crazy. It's remarkable they're as good as they are without ever spending any money.
I remember they signed Stephen Defoe there a few years ago, and I was absolutely shocked because it was a non-English
or
country.
Irish.
Yeah. All the foreign players are Irish or New Zealand in Chris Wood.
Goodmanson.
Goodmanson, oh yeah.
That's it. Right, so moving on to next game. I said it was an interesting game at the end of last week's podcast, and it definitely proved to be that. Aston Villa at home to Southampton. It looked like Southampton were running away with it at 4-0 up, but Aston Villa had a bit of a late rally, got 3 goals back. Jack Grealish really came into his own at the end of that game, but having watched the game as a whole, I couldn't believe when Southampton were 4-0 up, because they really weren't that impressive. They scored 2 free kicks. You can't really account for that, really. I don't know when the last time James Ward-Prowse scored a free kick, never mind 2. And then it was 2 set pieces. So they're really unfortunate to find themselves 4-0 down, and they ended up nearly clawing it back. And I think a draw absolutely would have been a fair result. Aston Villa very hard done by. I wouldn't worry about Aston Villa based off this game.
Just coming on James Ward-Prowse, he's kind of one of these players who's kind of been about for quite a while. He's always been decent enough, but like that's his kind of level, kind of mid to lower Premier League table. I think he's got 4 goals already this season, and he's always kind of been decent enough on dead balls. I know he hasn't scored a free kick recently, but he has scored quite a few in the Premier League. I wouldn't be surprised if he's up there for...
He scored more free kicks than Letitia.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he's up there for current... in terms of players currently playing the Premier League for most free kicks scored. Like that with Villa. I mean, the defence, I know it was 2 set pieces and 2 free kicks, but the defence is kind of their main problem. They look fine going forward. I know we've touched upon it loads. They look fine going forward. Like Ollie Watkins, grand. Grealish is one of the better creative midfielders or creative attackers in the league. So yeah, just based off that, you wouldn't be too worried as a Villa fan.
Yeah, so the last game we're going to be talking about from the weekend just gone by, in what was a pretty entertaining weekend of Premier League action, was Leicester's rout of Leeds. On the podcast last week, I predicted a 3-0 win. Ronan predicted a 3-0 win. I think James said 2-0. Mixer said 3-1. So we really weren't giving Leeds much of a chance. And I looked at those predictions before the game, and I thought that was a bit harsh, but it ended up being that way. Leicester's quality really came through. For the first goal, Robin Knox error, absolutely shocking. Really poor touch. Then a very bad back pass. Jamie Vardy latched onto it because he's Jamie Vardy and squared it to Harvey Barnes, and it was 1-0, and it was basically game over from there. Yuri Tielemans was unbelievable. He's an absolutely brilliant player. He scored 2 goals and a pretty comfortable win. Leeds coming back to earth after a good start in the Premier League.
Yeah, I think Tielemans is probably one of the most underrated players in the league. I think everybody rates him, but like nobody talks about just how good he is. I suppose he's kind of most comparable to the likes of Gini Wijnaldum. Probably a better player than Wijnaldum, I think. But he's kind of box to box. Is kind of gonna when it's kind of a tough game, he's gonna get stuck in. He's able to drive the team forward and that through the midfield. To Harvey Barnes is brilliant again. I know I'm probably his biggest fan on this podcast, but I think he's really, really good. Scored the first, created the second. I know it was Vardy's header rebounded to Tielemans, but I think it's just Leeds kind of played that little bit of a high line there against Leicester, and you're going to get punished playing the likes of Leicester because it's really easy for them to get in behind with the likes of Barnes and Vardy. I actually switched off after the third goal, so I didn't really get a look at Maddison. But yeah, overall, just a good performance. I don't even think Leeds played that bad. I don't think maybe Leicester warranted a 3-goal victory. I thought Leeds actually looked pretty good going forward, and they had a few chances they probably should have scored. I think they hit the bar at 2-1 down as well, so like that, if they scored that, it's a completely different game. But I think once Leicester get the third goal, it's kind of, that's game over. No really coming back from that. It's kind of be a good start for Cengiz Under as well, because that's 2 games in a row now he's got an assist. So that's another good option for Leicester to have off the bench.
You have to say, I'm really impressed with Tielemans. Like, he's still quite young, but he's so much experience for a young player. Like, he played a load of games for Monaco, and now he's fit right in that Leicester squad.
Yeah, no, Leicester have a really good start to the season. They've got 5 wins and 2 losses, and I kind of thought they'd come down to earth a little bit because they overachieved last season, even if they did end up bottling top 4. But they've got still quite a thin squad. But, Brendan Rodgers, he's actually doing a brilliant job. And people talk about Pep Guardiola sort of, joke about him bringing passing football to England like it didn't exist before. But in actual serious sense, I think Brendan Rodgers has to take a lot of credit for sort of this new era of sort of possession-based football in the Premier League, because his Swansea team was really the first team I remember being impressed by growing up as being a possession-based team, even if they weren't very good. Remember Leon Britton at the base of that midfield.
Yeah, Britton, Joe Allen. The Welsh Avi. Yeah,
Sigurdsson that season for them.
Yeah, even when he was at Liverpool, I know Liverpool maybe weren't that great under Brendan Rodgers as a whole, but even the year we finished second, defensively we were awful. But in possession, I think Liverpool scored over 100 goals that year as well.
They did,
so in possession, it's maybe defensively his teams aren't set up as well, but Leicester even looked that poor at the back. And they definitely got a better defence than Liverpool did when Liverpool finished second that year, because I think we were playing Glenn Johnson, Skrtel, Daniel Agger, and
John Flanagan.
Who was playing left back?
John
Flanagan.
Flanagan was playing left back.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fuck. Yeah. So yeah, that's probably why we conceded over 50 goals that year.
The GOAT.
That's the only thing though. We kind of look at the teams that are outside top 6 squad depth. I mean, if Vardy gets injured, you've got Jose Perez, who's a good footballer, but he's nowhere near as good as Jamie Vardy, or he's not going to get the same amount of goals as Jamie Vardy. If they get injuries in midfield, I don't really know who else they have there. I don't think Ndidi's playing at the minute. I think it's Mendy's playing ahead of Ndidi because I think he's injured or something. If they get injuries in defence, I know they've got, who do they start at the minute? So Yonchu and
Johnny Evans. Wesley Fofana as well.
Wesley Fofana. Actually, Evans is out injured at the minute actually as well. So that's another thing, is if they keep fit, they're going to challenge for top 4, but it's just where that squad depth, especially with them playing in Europe this year as well. They might struggle a little bit more towards the end of the season to keep up the pace.
So I think that just roundabout covers all the action from the weekend just come by. So we're going to move on to the predictions. In the prediction game that we have going on, myself, Ronan, and Michael, all the 3 men on the podcast today, we got the exact same. We have 3 points, so it's still Ronan bottom on 15. I'm on 17. Michael's on 19. But James this week got 8 points. He got 2 predictions correct. He said
he got the Liverpool West Ham game right. He said 2-1 Liverpool. Yeah,
so he said 2-1 to Liverpool, and I can't quite recall the last game, but he got 2 games.
Was it Fulham? Was it the Fulham result he got right?
Yes, it was. Yes, because he said for Scott Parker. So purely because of your rant, not only was it absolutely heinous, it actually caused James to get another correct result.
Stand by what I said.
Thanks, Ronan.
Stand by what I said.
So
you shouldn't.
Moving on to the games for next week, we're going to be predicting. It's Everton against United at 12:30 on the Saturday, and it's so difficult to predict this one because I was confident last week ahead of the Arsenal game, and we recorded that before United won 5-0 against Leipzig. I was confident. I thought we would turn a corner, and thinking about it now, I'm going to stick with it. I think this week was a blip. I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to say a decent 2-1 win to United. I don't know how confident I am with that though. I'm
going to 1-1. They're both in poor form at the minute, and Everton still won't have Richarlison back.
Yeah, I would agree with Connell in the sense that United probably just going through a bad run of form. I say bad run of form. One bad game. So I'm going to go with a 2-0 United win.
So the next game, massive game. I think it's fair to say. I don't think you can undersell it. City at home to Liverpool. Again, another weird one to predict because City's form has been
They're 10th.
indifferent. It's fair to say. They've played a game less, to be fair, but I don't know. They haven't really got going yet. Liverpool, although they're top of the league, so you can't really complain with that, have definitely shown more cracks at the start of the season. Again, it's hard to say many bad things about them because, look, they're top of the league. They've still won 5 out of 7 games. But at the Etihad, I don't think Liverpool have a particularly good history there in recent seasons. So I'm going to back a 1-0 City win. Again, I don't really know what's that's based of. I know this is poor punditry, but just
we've lost.
It's in me waters. 1-0 City.
I think we've lost our last 3 league games. We lost our last 4 league games at the Etihad.
I think maybe that's the picture I have in my head.
Yeah, because I think there was the 5-0. There was 2 5-0s in there. Because I remember there was the one Mane got sent off as well. And then between that there was a 2-1 loss as well.
There was the 2-1.
18-19,
Yeah, the one we bought
Sane
in January. Yeah, Sane and Aguero.
Maybe that's 3 losses in a row. I know we beat them in the Champions League, but Liverpool in the Champions League are kind of a different story. Look, without fans there, I don't think Liverpool are gonna. I think the fans do make a big difference. I know last year you can't really read too much into 5-0 because of our game right after we won the league, and I don't think anybody was not hungover. But I still don't really fancy Liverpool playing at the end, especially without fans, because I think Liverpool fans would make more noise and kind of get on the back team a little bit more. So I think I'm going to go for maybe a little bit of a outside shout, but a 3-1 City one.
I'm not a man for going against my own team, but I sense a Man City win here. I just think Pep will have the boys firing. They'll be ready going into this game. Like Liverpool and City, the 2 dominant teams the last couple of seasons in the league. Sorry, Klopp and the boys, but going 3-0 City.
It's kind of a must win already for City, because if they lose, I mean, if they win, or even if they draw, they're 2 points behind us with a game in hand. But I think if they win, we could move 7 or 8 points clear of them already, which I know they probably still have a game in hand, but that's not a points difference you're going to want to make up. I know obviously you've got a long, long way to go in the season, but that's already a big disadvantage. That's probably where they lost the league last year, is they kind of fell off so early in the year. So they'll kind of want to avoid, they'll know how big a game this is, especially after poorly did last year. And even last year they weren't that bad. They still got something like 84, 85 points.
Yeah, so we don't have James's predictions in yet, but certainly the 3 of us on the podcast have all predicted against Liverpool, which means they're going to win. Yeah, so I've learned my lesson over the last couple of years. Somebody has to stop them. They can't keep getting away with this. So moving on to the next game. 2 good footballing teams. Arsenal at home to Aston Villa. I've had it up to here with Arsenal between them beating Dundalk and United. They're in my nightmares over the last week or so. But Aston Villa, again, it's weird. I'm predicting to lose this game. So that's going to be 3 losses in a row. But I still quite like Aston Villa. I think it's just because of expectations. I thought they'd go down. But I'm going to go with a 2-1 Arsenal win, because going forward, they still haven't really clicked. Defensively, they can be a bit dodgy. Villa look okay going forward, but they'll do just enough to win this, especially at home. 2-1 Arsenal.
I'm going 4-1 Arsenal. I think Aubameyang's going to actually start playing football again, because I know he scored a penalty the weekend, but he's still not actually firing all cylinders. I like a team that is defensively that aren't very good defensively. I think it's a good side for Arsenal to try and score a few goals against. So yeah, I do think Aston Villa are still quite overhyped. They're still good, they'll stay up, but yeah, I'm going for 3 losses on the bench for Villa. I'm
going 2-2 in this game. That is all I have.
Okay, so good result for Villa at the Emirates. Fair enough. So going on to the 4th game of 5, it's Leicester at home to Wolves. It's quite a hard game to call, I think. I think in general on the podcast, I've been pretty harsh on Leicester. Maybe I'm just wrong about them. As I said, they're doing better than I thought they would have this season. And Wolves, I haven't really been that impressed by. I think especially without Jota, he's a hard player to replace. Matt Doherty's very difficult to replace. They haven't really clicked, and they're looking that bit more uninspirational this season. Last year, you knew Jimenez was coming at you. He's still there, but without Jota, I don't know if he's as good. When you're going to Molineux, or even at home, you knew you were getting a tough game against Wolves. And I don't think that's really the case this season. So I'm going to have to give Leicester their dues. I'm going to say 2-0 Leicester win at the King Power.
I think I'm just going to go 2-0 to Leicester as well, just to be safe. I know that means nothing, especially if it does end up 2-0. We both get 3 points, but sure, look, at Leicester look like a better team overall. I don't think Wolves have been overly impressive in any of their games, really. Even the 2-0 at the start of the season to Sheffield. They scored 2 goals early on and they didn't really do much after that. And then they dropped points. They didn't look convincing against Leeds, and they got 1-0 victory. And got hammered by West Ham as well. Only drew against Newcastle, so Leicester a better side. But this is the thing. You don't put your money on a team for weeks, and then when they start doing well, you're like, oh, they'll probably definitely win, and then they'll end up losing something like 3 or 4-0. So, I don't know, 2-0 Leicester.
I'd agree with you is that I'll go with a Leicester win also, but I sent some goals in this one. 3-2 Leicester. So, same sort of predictions for all of us going for a Leicester win, but I'm going to be a bit out there. Take a leaf out of James this big. For all I know, he's going to go and say 5-0 Wolves, and for all we know, that's going to happen because he's been winning. He's winning, and we can't stop him. He's unstoppable, and it's not fair. But I'm going 3-2 in this one.
So then moving on to the last game. Usually when I'm predicting, don't know what happened there. I'll cut that out. Usually when I'm choosing games to predict for the podcast, I kind of go with the most interesting ones. But to throw a spanner in the works, I've thrown a really boring game. Brighton against Burnley at the Amex, 1-1. This won't be a good game.
We're going another rant, lads.
Please don't.
Get the bleep ready.
No. I have to edit this.
No, I don't hate these two as much because they're not anywhere near as... Their existence in the Premier League doesn't offend me. It's just disrespectful having West Brom and Fulham in the league. It's both just about to go off again there. Yeah, any of these teams between shit teams are just going to go shit 0-0 draw.
Statement.
It's just standard at this stage.
I'm not going to watch this game. I'm just saying it now because it's going to be absolutely
we won't be reviewing this
dreadful.
next week.
So we're going 0-0. This it's going to be the worst game ever.
Odds on this being like 7-5. What's on pay-per-view
No,
or something?
not going to happen.
And
0-0.
James will predict 7-5 and get it right.
Yeah, probably.
Dickhead.
Right, so I think that just about wraps up the podcast. Unfortunately, we won't have a podcast next week because it's the international break, which means a break for the Barstoolers as well. But when we return in 2 weeks' time with the usual Premier League podcast, as far as I know, we're going to have a guest on. I'm not going to say who that guest is because we might have to reschedule or something might happen. But as far as I know, we've got a guest penciled in. It's a brilliant guest. If you're in any way interested in Irish football and Irish players in the Premier League, absolutely tune in to next episode as well because it's going to be a really good interview.
It may or may not be Cristiano Ronaldo. We can't confirm.
Don't give it away.
Or
Just saying the
presidential candidate Joe Biden.
or president by that stage.
He could be at the minute.
Yeah,
He's
well,
presidential
but be
candidate.
president-elect. It wouldn't be. I don't think they're into. Well, we're not making this a politics.
Yeah.
podcast.
Next week, tune in
Go
to
on.
the international break to Barstoolers politics. That we're going to have Claire Byrne on. Okay, but seriously,
So what are your thoughts on Leo's comments, lads?
Don't get me started. Right, so I think that just about wraps up the podcast. Again, thanks very much for listening. We surpassed 60 subscribers on the YouTube. As I say every week, we've been really happy with the feedback and support we've gotten so far. So please do like, subscribe, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. to keep this going. Give us that motivation to keep going. But as I said, thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.